Hi, good afternoon. My name is Allison Stokes. I'm a resident of Sharon, and I'm a community volunteer that helped organize this event. One of the community volunteers that helped organize this event. I want to start by thanking Reverend Jolie and the Unitarian Church of Sharon's Board and Congregation. Thank you for allowing us to use this beautiful space. And thank you, Reverend Jolie, particularly for being here today and for your powerful words of welcome. I also want to thank MAPPA for sponsoring this event and all the community volunteers who helped to make it happen. So can we just please? I want people to note that this presentation will contain stories and images that are disturbing. If at any time you need to step out, please do so as quietly as possible, and please also refrain from interrupting or asking questions until after the presentation. We're going to hold around 20 minutes or so for a Q&A where people can ask questions to Dr. Rahman about his personal experiences. All right, with that, Dr. Aziz Rahman is a dual board certified diagnostic and vascular interventional radiologist. Born in Worcester and raised in Wrentham, Dr. Rahman completed his undergraduate and medical education through the accelerated 6-year BA/MD program at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and went on to complete a medical internship at the University of Massachusetts. He then completed a radiology residency at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston and pursued subspecialty training in interventional radiology at Massachusetts General Hospital, Harvard Medical School. In June of this year, Dr. Rahman traveled to Gaza as part of a medical aid mission to provide care at Nasser Hospital. He is here today to share his experiences with us. Please welcome Dr. Rahman. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Jolie and Allison and everyone from MAPPA and the congregation here for coming and supporting me in this discussion. So my name is Dr. Rahman, as Allison introduced myself, and I went to Gaza in June. The following presentation is my objective experience, but as you'll come to see, there's a lot of material in here that might make you upset, that might stoke some emotions, and that's not my intention, but I think that is our true inner fitra, as we call it in Arabic, but kind of your innate feelings and your innate ability to understand what humanity is all about. So my training involved going through the Hippocratic Oath, and this is an oath that every physician has to take, and this is one of the core tenets that any physician, especially in America, has to live by, and essentially dedicates that our life is dedicated to humanity, and it's always for the well-being of the patient, no matter who they are, no matter what their background is, no matter the ethnicity, social standing, political affiliation, and this is a promise that we make as physicians upon our honor and without threat, and it really dictates everything that we should and do as physicians. And truly, this is not a political issue that I'm speaking of. It's a medical and humanitarian issue that I'll be talking about, even though it might get murky. But my point is, medicine is truly sacred and truly universal, and I don't think that's controversial by any means. There's some quotes that I included that I really thought really enveloped that idea. A stethoscope has no nationality, and a scalpel cuts the same flesh in every language. The duty to heal is sacred. It is not negotiable. It is not suspended during war. So that said, I often get asked, why did I go to Gaza? So first things first, there's obviously an infinite amount of conflicts going on in the world, unfortunately. It's just the reality of the world we live in. But one of the reasons I felt more obligated to go to Gaza is you'll see the statistics that we'll talk about. And we as Americans have a large portion of our tax dollars going there. So I felt a little bit more connected to this conflict than other conflicts going on in the world. It's a humanitarian mission at the end of the day. And I come home every day from work with a sense of accomplishment that I helped anywhere between 10 and 30 patients, depending on how many procedures I do a day. But then I come home, watch the news, look at my social media, and that's contrasted by the amount of people that are dying. And so I found that kind of strange, how I'm living so comfortably knowing that on the other side of the world, people don't have that luxury. And then I believe as healthcare workers, no matter what language they speak, you can meet a doctor on the other side of the world and you'll figure out a common interest, a common goal, a common love for medicine. And to me, providing support to the healthcare workers of Gaza was an undeniable opportunity that I wanted to be part of. So one of the reasons I went is I came across a medical organization, Rahma Worldwide. They had never taken an interventional radiologist there. Most people don't really know what that is. It's a specialist of radiology that does minimally invasive procedures through imaging, whether it's cancer treatment, to pain treatment, to biopsies, to drainages of abscesses through minimally invasive techniques. So I happen to be the first interventional radiologist in Gaza. There's only 2 in Gaza. For comparison's sake, in Boston, there's probably more than 300 to 600 interventional radiologists for a population 1/4 of the size of Gaza. But most healthcare workers that go there are trauma surgeons, vascular surgeons, thoracic surgeons, neurosurgeons. But now they're realizing they need to send more chronic care specialists as well. Pediatricians, internal medicine physicians, OBGYNs. Every type of doctor is actually necessary. It's just a matter of priority right now. And another thing I left with was I had to leave my family when I went. And that is a reality I had to live with. And part of that process was saying goodbye to everyone, even though I'd still be in communication with them via cell phone. But there was a risk that I wouldn't come back. Part of that process was saying goodbye to my close family, writing letters to my kids, imagining what I would want to say to them in 10, 15 years if I was there. And that's just the reality. That the 500 physicians that have been there in the last 2 years all kind of go through the same mentality. So the process to get there, we flew into Amman, Jordan. It's about a 3-hour journey from Amman, Jordan to Gaza if there was no checkpoints, but it takes about 14 to 16 hours to actually get there through all the checkpoints. And 12 hours before we're scheduled to enter Israel to go to Gaza, we get an Excel document that basically has a green or red mark next to your name, and that's basically whether you're allowed in or not. Many of us, and I hate to have to say this word, we're smuggling in baby formula, food, medical supplies to take to Nasser Hospital that other physicians who have just left said is absolutely necessary, whether it be oxygen sensors for your fingers, whether it be tele leads to monitor cardiac activity. These are things that we take for granted in hospitals and clinics here, but they're pretty much non-existent in Gaza. So we were trying to take in as much medical equipment, food, protein. I took protein powder, the stuff that we take after we work out. It's like a lifeline there in baby formula. And it's all checked by Israel, and they decide whether they can confiscate it or not. And then once we actually got to Nasser Hospital, the conditions there were pretty excruciating, and we'll get into that. So there were 6 of us on our medical team. 4 of them were Americans. One was a Jordanian, and one was French. And it was a great team. We had good camaraderie. We went in very energetic and very excited, and we really thought we would make the world of a difference. The reason it's so important for foreign physicians to go there, and I always tell my physician colleagues that you need to make an effort to go there, is we fill in critical gaps in patient care. Unfortunately, the reality is, whether it sounds nice or not, specialist physicians are targeted. The local Gazan physicians are targeted on a routine basis. In fact, most recently, a cardiologist was just killed along with his family, and it's not a one and done kind of phenomenon. There's a pattern to it, and any physician can tell you that this is just the reality. So we, as specialists, go there and we can fill in these roles, whether it be a neurosurgeon, whether it be a orthopedic surgeon. The physicians that are working there are working very long hours. And if it's not long hours, it's very intense hours. So for example, in the ER, they do 4-hour shifts because it's just too intense. The surgeons and the anesthesiologists, they do 24-hour shifts. And they go home, and their job is to find some food for their family, find some firewood for their family, which is basically old furniture that's broken down, and bring it to their tent. And then usually the wife cooks it for the family, and then they go to sleep on the sand, and then rinse and repeat every day. And those are the physicians and surgeons of Gaza. From a humanitarian relief and solidarity point of view, it shows that we haven't forgotten about not only the patients, but the doctors, and it gives hope for the patients as well, which is probably one of the most important things. Right now, foreign doctors that have specialized training can also provide pretty complex management. So we had an oncological surgeon with us who was doing advanced sarcoma and cancer surgeries, which is completely forgotten about in Gaza right now. And then one of the main things, in my opinion, is bearing witness to what we saw and coming back to the regular world and speaking on it. Dr. Mimi Sayed, 2 days ago, was just denied going back into Gaza. She has been there twice, but she was very vocal about what she saw there, kind of like what I'm doing here. And she was just barred from entering Gaza 2 days ago. And I do want to show this because I think it's very important to understand what she was trying to do here. So this is her. I'm not concerned about the audio. She's basically saying she was denied, and she's in her hotel in Amman, and this is the kind of stuff she was trying to take in. So it's tuna, baby formula, food, some medical supplies. There's no reason to why she was denied. They don't give any reasons. They just say you can't come in. And this is kind of a trend. We're actually doing a study on this to determine the rate of physician denials from America specifically, because it seems like it's becoming, unfortunately, more and more common. So our job there, we thought we were just going to be doctors and surgeons, but it turns out we were journalists, because no international journalist is allowed to go into Gaza. We were humanitarianists, we were mental health supporters, we were advocates. And I was very grateful that when I came back and while I was there, the media really took up our cause and wanted to convey our voices to the bigger audience. And so these are just some of the opportunities I've had, and my colleagues have had various opportunities, whether it be speaking at the UN Security Council, to doing media interviews in Dallas, to speaking at various conferences around America, to, I think this is an amazing opportunity, speaking at a church in Sharon, Massachusetts. And I think there was some concern about why we were doing it on a Saturday, so I just wanted to make it extremely clear it's based on my schedule, and I'm more than willing to do it at a synagogue if there's any concern about why it was done on a Saturday. So a CNN article from a few weeks ago said the weak are treating the weak. Doctors are fainting while doing procedures in Gaza. This is the reality. Multiple times I experienced this, not myself, but I was with local Gazans. Medical student fainted while we were going up the stairs, and they just don't have enough calories to sustain themselves. And they're very selfless people. They will put their patients ahead of themselves, and I think that represents the quality of a physician anywhere. So you might ask, why should you listen to me? And the reason is, I think a physician's testimony is very powerful. I'm not asking you to trust me as a person. I'm asking you to trust me as a physician, a doctor, and the rest of the 500 or 1,000 doctors that have been there, nurses have been there. And this is a British medical journal. It's one of the biggest medical journals in the world. Some of you guys probably heard of New England Journal of Medicine. This is the British version, essentially. And it says, mass death and starvation do matter to a medical journal. Reporting on destruction of healthcare facilities, on the killing of healthcare professionals and humanitarian aid workers is the business of a medical journal. Doctors and healthcare facilities are not legitimate targets. The voices of doctors working in those conflict zones perhaps offers the most powerful account of events. Has any doctor in Gaza or returning from Gaza said there's nothing to see here, that the accounts of death and destructions are exaggerated. So I think that's kind of why my ask, take this seriously and share what I'm saying. It's not made up stuff. This is just the reality. And in medicine, we're trained to convey facts through level 1 evidence, primary evidence, and that's what I'm going to provide to you. And I used sources that are legitimate and non-negotiable, whether it be the UN, whether it be the World Health Organization. These are organizations that we've been relying on for almost a century, so I think they're pretty reliable. So right now, there's about 1,800 beds in Gaza. In comparison, Boston has about 5,500. And again, Boston's population is about 1/4 the population of Gaza. More than 500 doctors or nurses have been killed. 61,000 people have been dead, 50% of which are women and children. And 85% of people are displaced from their original homes. And less than 15% of the original geography is actually available to live in. So people just don't have anywhere to even move to at this point. So this is just the breakdown as of July 31st, 62,000 officially dead, of which 18,000 are children, 9,700 are women. And you know, I always present this slide, and that says 27,000 men. And I think people just forget about this. They just say, oh, women and children, women and children. But these men include brothers, fathers, just normal human beings, civilians. And I think people kind of forget the fact that men deserve more than a statistic. And that's what we saw there. Because what turns out in Gaza right now, they have to get aid from different sites, which are about 5 to 10 kilometers away. And the family usually relies on the man to traverse dangerous territories, dangerous areas, and lands that really don't make sense and are apocalyptic to go get some grain. And that's going to be that person in the statistic. And I wanted to be fair with my statistics. So this is from 972 magazine. This is a legitimate source from Israel that just put this out yesterday. And it says 83% of all those killed are civilians. And this is using Israeli army intelligence. So there's really no question about this. The reason I even point this out is because a lot of critics will say that the 62,000 number is a Hamas-run Ministry of Health number, and so it cannot be relied upon. But this essentially nips that in the bud, and there's really no question about it. In fact, the question should remain, is 62,000 the actual number? And all the medical journals out there essentially state there's no way it's 62,000. For example, the Lancet, which is a very famous journal, says using war theory, it's usually a factor of 5 to 10. So obviously that is a number that doesn't even make sense, but up to 300,000 dead, potentially. I'm not saying that as a fact. I'm saying those are what journal articles estimate is a reality, because right now no one has been able to go under the rubble and actually find bodies. So you might ask, why are 50% of those killed women and children? Well, Gaza has a very young population. The bombs that are being used really just destroy neighborhoods, and people don't really have a place to go to for forced displacement. They've already been displaced about 4 or 5 times on average. What does that mean? That means they have taken up everything they can carry and moved from point A to point B, and then have done that 4 more times. And they don't really have any personal belongings at this point. They just have 4 sticks, a piece of tarp, and that's their tent. And that piece of tarp is shared with their neighbors. And there's not just a husband and wife living in that tent. It's children, in-laws, uncles, aunts, and 1/3 of Gaza to 1/3 of Gaza lives in tents like that called the Mawasi refugee camp in Khan Yunis, where we were. Again, I know this is heavy, and my goal is not to depress you. My goal is to just share the objective information, but it is what it is. That's kind of my motto. When we went there, it was really heavy, and for a non-physician, I completely understand this might be too heavy. but I do need to share the facts. So what percent of amputations are in children under 18? According to multiple international organizations, and you can fact check these, 50%. What proportion of children show PTSD? 80 to 90%. I would argue that's 100%. What percent of Gaza currently has access to clean drinking water? Less than 5%. And why, you might ask, and again, this is just the reality. This is not an anti-Israel talk per se, but the reality is it's Israel army that bombs these water distribution processes. And the evidence is blatantly clear. It's not me just saying that. The UN reports, the UNRWA reports, the UNICEF reports, Reuters News, Palestinian Red Cross Society have all mentioned this as facts. In fact, when we were in the hospital, many would come to the hospital for clean drinking water because there's some desalination plants that don't work, and then they rely on trucks to come deliver water. So while we're talking about some pretty sick patients, and I'm talking like to a neurosurgeon about how to save this patient with blood in their brain because they got shot in the brain, there's about 5 to 6 kids asking us, where's the water? And to the point that the local doctors who are so used to it are shooing the kids away. Like, get out of here. We're trying to do some work, you know? And like, I'm trying to tell the kid the water's over there, but the door's locked, you know? So I don't speak their language, so that was kind of difficult. So this is just a kind of what I was saying about there's 5,000 beds in Boston approximately. And in Palestine, in Gaza right now is about 1,900 beds. And that's distributed amongst Nasser Hospital, which is the hospital I was at. And that's the only primary functioning hospital left in Gaza. There's other hospitals, such as Shifa Hospital, Al-Ahli Hospital. You probably heard these on the news. But those are really not hospitals. Imagine taking some rubble and a few volunteers saying, hey, this is now the ER. That's kind of what those hospitals are, and we'll kind of go into that. So this is a chart from May 2025 from the UN, basically saying how many healthcare workers have been detained, how many have been killed, how many hospitals have been destroyed, how many are intact. So there's one hospital intact, that's Nasser Hospital. 1,000 attacks on healthcare personnel, 300 doctors are detained. I met 2 of them who just recently came out of jail with no charges. So right now, as of August, so this month, there is a little bit more aid coming into Gaza, but that aid is not being distributed. So for example, it goes to Nasser Hospital, and only 40% of those admissions that go to Nasser Hospital can actually be distributed throughout Gaza. And that's because it's just not safe for those medical teams to travel and share those resources to other hospitals in Gaza. So when I say Nasser Hospital is the only functioning hospital, it really is. It's the only hospital that's getting resources, and all the other hospitals just don't get the resources that they need, whether it be simple supplies, like I said, like an oxygen sensor, to more advanced supplies such as orthopedic hardware for bone fractures. The next slide is not political, it's just the reality. Last year, 2024, the Israeli army invaded a hospital, Nasser Hospital, and kicked everyone out essentially at gunpoint. And I met many of the doctors and nurses who were there at this time. And 2 of them were actually arrested and only recently got released. This is Al-Shifa Hospital. This is what it was before this conflict, and this is what it is now. It used to be the biggest hospital. It used to be like the MGH or the Harvard Medical System or the UMass, depending where you are. And now it's basically rubble. So before and after. But the brave doctors of Gaza and the brave doctors who go there are actually still using this as a hospital. And I'm not saying it's a functioning hospital, it's just a space. So you can kind of see where, how the hospital wards look like. It's not like our private little 1-bedroom hospital room that we have, or two patients in a hospital. It's as many as you can pack in. And we have these makeshift tents that the UN provided, the WHO provided, that house as many patients as we can fit in there. And this is what we see. The problem is, on hot days, it gets very hot in there. On cold days, it gets very cold in there. And it's not very comfortable. There's no privacy. There's no drapes. You're, You're doing physical exams on everyone with no privacy. So where is Gaza? Pretty sure everyone knows this, but just wanted to make it very clear. It's in the Middle East. It's about 100 miles from Amman, Jordan. It's broken down into about 5 states. So in America, we have states kind of like that. So North Gaza, Gaza City, Dar al-Balah, Khan Yunis, where we were, and then Rafah, which no human soul lives in at this point, aside from the Israeli military. So this is where Nasser Hospital was. And just as an overlay, just to make you understand how small Gaza is, Sharon is where the star is at. So that's Gaza. It's 30 miles, approximately 26 miles by 6 miles. And you can basically do a marathon every day if you'd like. So 28 by 7.4 at its widest. So as for my trip, we took a journey there through bulletproof cars. We had helmets and bulletproof vests. And we stayed in this safe house, which you can kind of see is riddled with bullet holes. I don't know if that comes out clearly on the slide. And we stayed for the first night in this safe house in about 15. This is Mawasi refugee camp. I've read anywhere from 15 to 1/3 of all Gaza lives here in tents. The doctors and nurses that we worked with at Nasser Hospital also live here. This is just a side-by-side comparison. This is the beach of Gaza and how after the conflict it's just full of tents and people trying to figure out a space to live. So when people are asked to displace from the north, there literally is no place to move to. That's the problem. This is just normal living. People are pushing cars instead of the cars driving them. There's mules, there's donkeys. There's kids still playing with kites in the distance, and you see mostly tents. Some buildings are still standing here and there. You see children playing on a trampoline that they found in the rubble. You see a father and daughter just hanging out in the rubble, hiding in the shade. As we're driving to the hospital, we see a mosque that's completely destroyed. We see one of the Greek Orthodox churches that was hit. And more recently, one of the Catholic churches was struck. And World Central Kitchen aid caravan was attacked. The reason I showed these is because people always ask me, why, how did you take that risk? At the end of the day, I think I was safe as an American doctor. I don't think anyone would want to kill me, but the reality is these events have happened, whether it be a church, whether it be a World Central Kitchen. So it is a risky journey, to say the least. Once we arrived at Nasser Hospital, this is just what we saw. We saw the dialysis center on the top left, which was just built, was burned. You can kind of see damage to the emergency room. You see ambulances, which are destroyed. In some areas, you can see where tanks have crushed them. This is the burn unit where a journalist was being treated, and a drone strike happened in the burn unit in Nasser Hospital, and 5 patients died, along with many nurses, local nurses. This is the Nasser Hospital. We stayed in the balcony up on the 4th floor, so we had a really nice view of everything. And this is my team walking in. Just want to talk about the work environment. We were at the last functioning hospital, and every 30 minutes we were seeing explosions, hearing explosions which tremble through your eardrums, shake the doors, windows, even within the operating rooms, everything's shaking. These are very, very powerful munitions. I'm not a weapons expert, but I will say these are extremely, extremely powerful bombs. So that's kind of how the background was. When we first got there, it was very shocking, but you kind of get used to it. And this is kind of how it is in the hospital. There's no set clinics. It's just the doctor's call room where they sleep. The patients bring their baby in for a pediatric checkup, and that's kind of how it goes. This is me hanging out with some of the pediatric surgeons. And I asked them, why do you have bullets? And he says he extracted these from kids, and he said, I will provide evidence when the war tribunals begin. Sorry, it says Providence there. This is Dr. Mark Bruner from Oregon. He's an ER doctor. This patient lost their blood pressure during a surgery, so we were checking the patient's heart to see if it was still beating and what was going on. And again, if we weren't there, we wouldn't be able to provide that service, because that ultrasound he's holding is a $3,000 ultrasound, butterfly ultrasound that we bought from America, and technically is not allowed, so we smuggled that in, if you want to say it like that. But it's a medical device that's extremely important, and we donate it to the locals because they absolutely need it. This is me. You'll notice we smile a lot there. And it is what it is. Like, you just got to have fun when you're doing things in trauma. And the locals smile a lot. If you didn't know, they're going through what I will proclaim is a genocide as a healthcare worker. It's not official. Only the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, can say it is a genocide by legal standards. Then you wouldn't even know that the locals are going through such a problem because they just smile so much. They're very grateful people. We'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But the equipment here was very dated. This was very challenging to do. As many of you know, as a radiologist, I deal with x-rays a lot, which is bad for your body, so we have to protect ourselves. So I found one thyroid shield. This protects you from thyroid cancer, the little protection. No one else in the hospital had that, so only I did, which was very sad, because I wonder what's going to happen to all these people. This is an x-ray machine, very dated, probably something you'd find from like the 90s. This is kind of how beds are. It's as clean as they get. I mean, obviously the bed sheets wouldn't be there, but they're just blood stained, and it doesn't really project well here, but there's flies all over the beds because there's residual blood. They clean it, but you can only clean it so much. So in Nasser Hospital, like I said, is the last functioning hospital. I just wanted to, these are my pictures, by the way. This is the burn unit where I said 5 patients were. And I don't know if many of you guys have watched Batman. There's a scene where Joker bombs a hospital. And it's a very emotionally, obscene scene where it just doesn't make any sense. It's kind of how I felt here. I was like, how is this okay? And this has happened to every single other hospital in Gaza, and there's always an excuse. This is a patient who has passed away being taken by the family members to the morgue. One of the main things I learned from this experience was the importance of family members. Over there, if you don't have a family member coming in when you're dying, no one's going to take care of you. Like, the physicians will stabilize you and keep you alive, but then no one's moving you to the next step, whether it be you going to the CAT scan machine, whether you're getting your blood drawn, whether you're getting blood transfusions, whether you're getting moved to the floor. That's all the responsibility of the family members. There's no techs, there's no nurses, there's no other healthcare staff that's available to help these patients out. So sometimes we would have a patient whose entire family was killed, and we would order a CAT scan, and we would notice 10 minutes later that that patient's still in the OR. No one has taken that patient to the CAT scan. So sometimes we would have to understand that no one's there with the patient, and we would tell the medical student to go do it. And that's just the importance of family members. Fortunately, we see that with kids a lot. There'll be kids who come in with their entire family killed, and this happens every day. I mean, it just happened. I keep in touch with these Gazans. This just happened yesterday, where 4 family members passed away, a 10-year-old with 50% burns. They tried to keep him alive, but he also passed away. So this is just the reality. So this is just me working in the OR, the operating room, which was actually pretty nice. They actually put most of the resources into the operating room. This is me working on an x-ray machine. This is one of the CAT scanners. Everyone knows what a CAT scanner is, I assume. There's 2 to 3 in Gaza. For comparison's sake, I would say in Boston is probably like, 300, 400 CAT scanners. This CAT scanner is pretty much used 100% of the time for trauma patients. Very rarely did we actually get to do procedures using this CAT scan machine. So, using this, we saw every patient who comes into the hospital with trauma, which is pretty much everyone, gets a CAT scan. So this is an X-ray, but part of the CAT scan of a child with a bullet in the abdomen, more bullets in the abdomen. And again, these pictures are not pleasant. So if you're sensitive to this kind of things, which I completely understand you to be, then this picture might not be nice, but I did try to block it out a little bit. This is a 9-year-old who was trying to get food from the GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is a American and Israeli-backed food distribution method that's new since March, and basically took over UN delivery for food. And about 1,000 people have died in these, trying to get food from these sites. So this is a 9-year-old boy who was trying to get food. If you think about that, a 9-year-old boy has left his home, which is a tent in Khan Yunis, to go 5 to 10 kilometers away to get a bag of flour, which probably weighs about 25 kg, which is about 50 pounds, to put on his shoulder, to take back 5 to 10 kilometers back to his home. And that's kind of the expectation of this 9-year-old. Well, turns out he got shot in the chin. I blocked it out because I don't think it's appropriate to show. And that's the bullet in his C-spine, in his cervical spine, and he'll be quadriplegic for the rest of his life. And my argument, and this sounds very blasé, but it's probably better to die than be paralyzed in Gaza or be handicapped in Gaza, because there's really no room for being handicapped in Gaza. This is a far too common scene. This is a bullet shot through the head, the brain, with blood pretty much all over the brain. This is just an example of someone who has a fever. They have Tylenol, paracetamol there, but they try to really limit the use of it because they don't have enough. So this is someone who has a fever. They're using ice packs and wet towels to put on their head to kind of relieve the fever. And you might say, this is a common thing in a third world country, or, oh, this is how back where I'm from, this is how they used to do it in the villages of India or whatever. I'm from India, so I can say that. But the reality is that the solutions to these problems are 30 to 60 minutes away. They're just not being allowed in. The medical supply, the medical aid, the humanitarian aid, the food is all there at the borders in Oman and Jordan and Egypt, but it's not being allowed in. And you might be asking, who is not allowing it in? And again, this is not an anti-Israel talk, but it's Israel that's not allowing it in. That's just the fact. So what are the types of patients and what are the types of injuries? So I told you about the GHF sites, and I was not at the GHF sites. So I cannot give you primary evidence of what happened there, but I will tell you whenever the GHF site opened, we would see an influx of patients, about 400 patients, called a Mass Casualty Incident. And then more recently, whether you want to believe it or not, there are some whistleblowers coming out talking about their role in the GHF sites. They're basically American mercenaries who are coming out and saying they felt uncomfortable, and they're telling you what's happening at these GHF sites from the other side. But it's really interesting to hear their testimony because we were on the receiving end of it, and it's like a puzzle piece. It all just kind of comes together. Another type of injury was gunshot wounds, and they were very accurate. They're always almost in the head and neck. Sometimes you'll see them lower in the chest, lungs, heart area. That's critical mass shots. Blast injuries were far too common, burns, shrapnel, explosions. I wanted to talk about experimental because it's not just me saying this. This is, there are very peculiar weapons being used. I'm not a weapons expert, but there are very peculiar weapons being used. More recently, a surgeon who's renowned in the world put it on his Instagram. There's perfectly machined pellets inside of a bomb, which basically explode into thousands of pieces, and they don't, they're meant to just maim a body. And these types of munitions are banned from the world, from the international law. There's trampling injuries, people trying to get food. There's drone strikes. There's more recently, a kid just died because they dropped aid from one of those military aid planes, and it fell onto some kid and he died. So people are dying in every which way. This is the dialysis center. Like I said in the initial part of my slide, it was burned by the Israeli military on their way out of Nasser Hospital after they invaded it. This is kind of the result. So right now they're using a makeshift area for dialysis. In America, if someone has kidney failure, I'm sure there's 1 or 2 people here that might be going through dialysis. You get dialysis 3 days a week, probably 4 hours in each of those sessions. But in Gaza, they were getting 1 day a week for 1 hour, which is essentially just to keep you alive. So these mass casualty incidents were almost a daily occurrence. I think there's a show called The Pit, where the last episode, they're gearing up for a mass casualty incident. And I don't think anything pales in comparison to what we saw there. You saw maybe 300, 400 patients come in, and I'm talking about a matter of 4 hours, which completely overwhelms any ER. We're talking about injuries where 10%, 15% are kids, 10, 15% are women, 10, 15% are elderly, and about 45, 55% are men. And again, I already told you why the majority are men. And this is kind of what it looks like. The family members just kind of drop the relative on the floor, expect the doctor to take care of it. There's a lot of pictures I did not include here that I included in my medical presentation, where people are literally carrying in a leg, and another family member is bringing in the relative who's alive. They're expecting us to attach the leg back to the body. And so it just becomes absolutely devastating and overwhelming. And we see children injuries far too common. This next slide is one of my stories that I can't forget. This is a 1-year-old with 85% burn. We tried to keep this baby alive, but 85% burns basically is a ticket to death. And I call this the foil wrap of death. And this is the father taking the 1-year-old to the morgue minutes after we declared the baby dead. I was going to show this, but I think I won't. It's the mother basically finding out that her 1-year-old passed away, and you can hear her shriek, and it's not pleasant. She passed out, so we have to take care of her as well. This is me doing more procedures. This is the equipment. So in America, whenever I want to do a procedure, I have my nurses and techs open up a new package for everything. Obviously we want to use sterile supplies. But in Gaza, there's not that luxury, so we're using the same needle on everyone. We're using the same wires on everyone. Here's me kind of telling my tech, okay, get this out for this patient. This is a solution, kind of like alcohol, just cleans everything out. I don't really know the rate of infection from reusing these things, but this resource management was a huge issue. And that's kind of the reason us physicians are trying to smuggle in medical supplies, because there's no way patients are going to be able to get their procedures done. This is another one of my stories that is very powerful, very painful to even say, but I think it would be a disservice if I came here and talked to the world and not share these stories, because these are the stories that are happening routinely. So this is a 30-year-old pregnant female who comes into the ER after explosive injury, and she's 15 weeks pregnant. We check with an ultrasound to see if there's any heart tones for the baby. Unfortunately, there's none. And she's crashing, which means her blood pressure is falling really fast. So we take her to the OR, the operating room, and do an emergency hysterectomy, and we extract the fetus. Now, this next slide, I blocked out any of the gore. Okay, well, I hope you can handle that. But essentially, the surgeons are taking out the fetus and removing the uterus because it's bleeding so much. And this fetus is something I will never forget. In medicine, we have so many reasons for fetal demise, for someone has an abortion for medical reasons. And this one just didn't make sense. It was basically an exploded fetus with blood coming out of the neck. And that's not natural. No physician should see that or is expected to see that. It's not in our training. And this happens more often than we make it out, because I'm here presenting it to you. It does not mean that it doesn't happen anymore. And again, if you can't handle this, I'm not forcing you to watch this, but the next image is a blocked out image of the fetus, but I am going to show the toes, if that's okay. So that's the toes of the fetus. And I blocked out the actual fetus. Now this is, I like to paradox that story with this, because this is a happier story. And this is a 12-year-old kid who comes in with explosive injury, basically almost about dead, with his blood pressures in the 50s over 30s. And he has blood around his heart, blood around his lungs. Me and the doctor are putting in tubes in his chest. Turns out his blood pressure spikes back up, so it goes back to normal. And 2 days later, this is him and I talking on the balcony. He's happy, he's smiling. His name's Amir. just a good kid, just grateful that there's this guy from America who put a drain in his heart, which I'll never meet him again. But these are the kind of stories that make you feel really gratified for going there. Because at the end of the day, most patients you interact with there are probably going to die. Whether even if you treat them, there's no food for healing. A lot of the orthopedic surgeons were frustrated because whenever they did a procedure, there's no wound healing because there's no nutrients, there's no protein for that wound to actually heal. So when you see these stories, it really, really, really sticks with you and makes you grateful. So, these stories were rare, so you kind of latch onto them and just can't keep telling them because they're just so enjoyable to say. So cancer is another problem there. It's just completely ignored right now because of trauma. We saw every type of cancer. This is an example of lung cancer. I told you that CAT scanner was pretty much always utilized for trauma, but I found an opportunity to help this mother out, and this is her two sons who were very grateful we were there to take this biopsy because no one local is going to do it. They're just so focused on the traumas. And so unfortunately she didn't make it. She passed away 2 weeks later because her cancer was too advanced. And this is unfortunately too common. This is a 30-year-old with a recurrent thyroid cancer because the proper treatment for thyroid cancer is not available. The proper treatment for thyroid cancer is radioactive iodine, which is obviously banned because it's radioactive. So a lot of these young females are getting recurrence of these thyroid cancers. This is kind of how there's no electronic medical record, so we would have to write everything out. And it was I tell you all these stories of death and gore, but it was a lot of amazing opportunities too. This is us teaching the locals. They were such grateful people to learn. This is one of my colleagues teaching the anesthesiologist. This is one of my colleagues teaching the internal medicine doctors how to use ultrasound. This is me giving a lecture to all the radiologists and interventional radiologists. This is me talking about one of the disease processes which they don't have the treatment algorithm for there, but we do in America, so I was kind of showing them some advanced treatments, and they were pretty surprised to hear that such things exist in the outside world. So the next topic is something that's very important to talk about, and it just got declared yesterday, so I try to keep this talk as relevant and up-to-date as possible for you, and again, as factual as possible. So it's famine. Many of you probably have heard of starvation, and that's probably the worst thing you've heard, but famine is actually the next level of starvation, where when 500,000 to 600,000 people have been declared under famine as of yesterday by the IPC, which is a international organization that works with the UN, we have entered a phase of almost irreversible starvation, and that's kind of what famine is. It's not just hunger. It's not just people are hungry and you just give them food and it fixes it. It's a point by which the body has gotten so deprived of food that when you give them food back, essentially you might kill them. You need specialized diets, you need specialized physicians, you need dietitians, you need basically a whole medical team of just experts in food delivery and electrolyte delivery to take these people out of famine. So like I said, it's stage 5, and it just got declared yesterday. And I always like to think, what is the criticism of this? What is the narrative that could be saying that this is not true, this is not actually happening? So Haaretz, which is a very popular newspaper in Israel, actually put a report out there 2 days ago saying famine is real. And there's another video which I'm not going to show for the sake of time. But it's happening. Even genocide scholars and genocide Holocaust survivors are saying it's a famine. So you can trust who you listen to, but the world is speaking. And these are 12 Holocaust survivors that have written an open letter stating that the famine needs to stop. And multiple organizations, UNICEF, World Food Program, World Health Organization, have essentially confirmed this, and it just, more numbers. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just showing you numbers, but the only solution to this is immediate aid delivery on a scale that is unprecedented at this point. So what are some of the causes of the famine? Well, nothing's being allowed in. Like I told you, medical supplies are not being allowed in, food is not being allowed in, except for very specialized delivery mechanisms like the GHF. Like I mentioned, hospitals are overwhelmed. diseases that we see on textbooks are coming out more routinely, like Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a very rare disease in America. We have the treatment for it. This morning, I got a text from my medical student saying her nephew got diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, and she's asking any physician coming to Gaza next, can they bring in some medications to treat her nephew? And so I texted everyone I know, and everyone's asking the same question now. So this is kind of how we're treating patients now, just asking some volunteers if they can smuggle in some meds. Fishing is illegal. They have a 28-mile coastline, but fishing is off limits. The GHF site is a death trap to many of the locals. They go there in absolute desperation. And some of the individuals who go there knowing full well that it might be their demise. But they're still willing to because the situation is so morbid that death is almost an escape from the reality. And that's not me saying that. I'm giving you what I was told by the locals. And I'm going to end this slide with a little bit of happiness. You know, these guys have perseverance. These guys are amazing people. They're playing on the beach, even though there's a risk of them being shot. They're not allowed to go in the water. And in fact, 2 weeks ago, I think this past week, it was record highs in Gaza, and then same day they were told, do not enter the water. So, but they still do, because they're stubborn, and they don't give up. So we didn't talk about refeeding syndrome. It's just a process by which the body doesn't really know what to do with the food that we give them. So my point is, even if we gave them food right now, the body needs to figure out how to deal with that food. And that's why we need specialized physicians, specialized nurses to go there and be able to really give the appropriate food. Essentially, it has to be high protein food. We can't just give carbs. That actually makes things worse. This might be one of the most important videos that we see from a historical point of view. This is the UN Relief Coordinator. And I think this will go down in the history books, so I have to show this.
It is a famine. The Gaza famine. It is a famine that we could have prevented if we had been allowed. Yet food stacks up at borders because of systematic obstruction by Israel. It is a famine within a few hundred meters of food in a fertile land. It is a famine that hits the most vulnerable first, each with a name, each with a story, that strips people of dignity before it strips them of life, that forces a parent to choose which child to feed, that forces people to risk their lives to seek food.
You know, we live on the other side of the ocean, but we think that something's happening there is very far away, but this is our tax money. This is our humanity at stake, and this is kind of his message. And it's very hard to listen to, and I think this is one of the most powerful videos I've seen, and it came out yesterday. And you can kind of hear the desperation in his voice. Like, can we do something, but it's already too late, even if we do. Kind of see him almost giving up. And it's very sad to see. Many leaders are saying the same thing, that famine is real, and we need to change it as much as possible, and that we can't have our politicians focus on PR stunts when people are starving. And this is the British Medical Journal again. I would say Britain is doing a pretty good job from the medical point of view, talking about what's going on. Unfortunately, in America, we have asked American Medical Association, American College of Pediatrics, New England Journal of Medicine to publish these things, but they are not. Don't know why. I lost about 15 pounds when I was there, just eating their diet. Most people lose about 15 to 20 kilograms at this point, which is about 40 pounds. For me, it was nice because I lost 15 pounds, but for them, it's pathologic. They have anemia. They have lack of vitamins. They're getting scurvy. They're getting every disease that, again, we used to read in the history books and medical books, and now it's popping back up. I mentioned this, that the aid is there. The babies is a whole different topic. We went to the PICU, the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit, because prematurity rates are on their all-time highs because women cannot get appropriate medical care. And we tried to tell the world, let's allow baby formula in. Everyone loves babies. There's no terrorism involved in baby formula, so let's allow baby formula in. We got NBC to cover it. We got ITV from the UK to cover it. We thought we were going to make a change. At the end of the day, it was denied. And these kids are dying. And I actually met this baby, Zainab, that's died. And this is maybe a 5-6-year-old. Now, I'm not going to show the video, but she's basically getting glucose injection because she has no food, no energy, and this is not sustainable. She's not going to live very long like this. The animals are starving. They're being overworked. This is a local medical student, Nermeen, who gave us this little gift. I have no idea how she made it or got it, but she was very grateful to have us there. These are some of the medical students that were just so grateful to have us there. This kid in the blue, his dad was just had an injury of his leg, and he had to help amputate his own dad's leg. Just crazy stories. These kids are beautiful children. I asked them what they want to be. Some said astronauts, some said mayors, some said doctors, just normal kids on the beach. This is kids in a makeshift tent, which they call a school. I asked the principal if I can take a picture and a video here, and he got really excited. He says, please do. I want the world to see that we are humans. This is a beautiful picture. At nighttime, we were walking back into the hospital area to get some rest, and we saw this little child playing with her sister and brother with this cat. And you could see her amputated arm and her injured knee, and the kids will always be kids. It was very emotional when we got to the beach. This is Dr. Mark. It was just a sign of life on the beach, and it was really beautiful to see. The Gazans get through this experience through prayer. Most of the people there are Muslims, but there are Christians there too. And this is us handing out candies, which is a very luxury item there. This is the locals making us bread. We got about 2 breads a day, so there's about 15 of us doctors, so they would make about 30 breads. And this is kind of what we ate with hummus from the chickpeas and from the beans. This is the medical team from various countries and some of the medical students and the hospital directors. This is our last meal, and we kind of all took our food that we brought and made a nice meal out of it. And we call this the Last Supper. And some of us joked we shouldn't call it that because that means we're going to die afterwards. So we're like, let's not say that. This is a picture I hold dear to my heart, and this man is a hero to me. His name's Hussam Abu Safiya. He's a pediatric doctor. He's infamous, unfortunately. He's famous for an infamous reason. He was the director of the hospital in the North Gaza, and the Israeli army told everyone to leave the hospital. He would not leave the incubated babies behind, so he was the last one to leave the hospital. And then this is the last picture that was ever seen of him in his white coat, and he's walking to the tanks, and he was arrested. He's still arrested since December 2024 with no charges. His lawyer just put an update about a week or 2 ago saying he's in very terrible condition. He's lost a lot of weight. He's wearing the same clothes as when he was arrested in the winter, and he has 0 charges against him. And like I said, there's about 300 doctors still in custody and with no charges. This is NBC News interviewing us in Gaza. These are local journalists. Like I said, international journalists are not allowed, so they try to hire some locals. I have about 5 slides left, so I'll be almost done. I advise you to look up the Geneva Convention in the Rome Statute. I'm not going to go through it, but they're the framework by which we should live in this modern age of nation states, and it was made after World War II to prevent another genocide from happening. And there's multiple warnings from various people from the UN that we cannot allow a genocide to happen in 2025. I had many reflections when I returned. Some of them were morbid, trying to remember the stories of a 30-year-old and a 70-year-old and who gets the breathing treatment, because there's only one, and whoever doesn't get it will die. In America, both of them would have gotten it, but over there, we had to make life or death decisions. I truly think this experience changed me. When I came back to Milwaukee, where I work and live, someone offered me to take me on a boat ride in the lake, And I said no. I just couldn't go on a boat and have fun when I just came back from this experience. I think the role of the doctors now is, when we come back, is to be advocates and talk about the stories of perseverance and amplify the voices of the voiceless, demand access of aid and food, and demand a ceasefire. One of the main things that they asked us was to convey their voices, convey their stories, and just convince people that they're human, which is a small ask of the world. So we physicians, we've come together. There's about 150 of us in a group, and we're just trying to do advocacy throughout America. Some of us are trying to get media interviews. Some of us are trying to do local grassroots movements. So again, I would like to thank our hosts here for giving us this opportunity. It really means a lot to us as physicians, and just be able to speak to you guys. I appreciate you guys coming out on this Saturday afternoon when you guys could be enjoying the weather with your families to hear about what's happening in Gaza from my experience. What I saw there was not normal for a war. There's just too many civilians, too many kids. I talked to you about their 2 asks and demands. So I ask you to share their stories as much as you can. And we talked about some of their stories of resilience, generosity, happiness, smiles. So I always end with this, that I went there physically, I came back, and I'm here in front of you, but my heart is still there, and I hope to go back one day. So again, for those of you who have friends or family that could not attend, I'm here for the next few days, and my goal is to just speak as much as I can in various ways. So for example, this talk I'm kind of going to repeat at another church in Boston on Tuesday. On Tuesday, I'm also doing one at Harvard Medical School, which will be more medically oriented. So if you have any colleagues in medicine that are interested, they can come to that. And on Monday, we're doing a talk in Quincy at the library. So apologize for anyone who couldn't come out on Saturday, but that wasn't my intention. Just a really busy week, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm very grateful for our hosts. Thank you so much. And that's it. Thank you so much.